Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Unfiltered with Bob Z, the podcast where we promise to give it to you unfiltered. We give it to you just like we get it. And so today we have a very special guest in the house. We have Shannon Glover, the city council person, soon to be mayor of the city of Portsmouth. And I believe, like my grandmother used to tell me, I'm going to speak some things into existence. So we're going to speak that into existence, and really happy to have you here.
Thank you, Robert. Glad to be here.
Okay, indeed. So let's jump right in. Let's jump right in with both feet. What is your vision? I'm just, as mayor of Portsmouth, I'm ready to start calling him Mr. Mayor, really, and that's just facts. And if I believe in something, it's just I'm not going to be afraid to show it or tell it. So I believe he's going to be the mayor of Portsmouth, and I'm happy that he's come on our show. And you know, you can call it bias or whatever you want, but you know, this is my show. It's Unfiltered with Bob Z. So what is your vision for the city of Portsmouth as the mayor?
Well, first of all, let me thank you for, again, bringing me on to kind of speak to the issues of what's happening in our city and how I am going to work with my colleagues on council to move our city forward. So my vision for Portsmouth consists of a bold new direction. And what that means, what that entails is citizens, city leaders, business leaders, educational leaders, the clergy, all of us working together, putting our strengths on the table, identifying the challenges that we face as a community, and collaborating, communicating, building that trust to ensure that we are improving the quality of life for all of our citizens in the city of Portsmouth. What that also includes is my focus and my commitment to making sure that these 5 priorities are top of the list. We've got to focus and continue and not take our ball off making education our #1 priority.
Okay.
In addition to that, workforce development and economic development are essential to the growth and viability of our community. Public health and safety are top of the list with the COVID-19 pandemic. We're going to continue to focus on how we can help our community and our public safety and first responders to meet the needs of the community as it relates to that. And then the other thing I want to talk about real quick is our infrastructure and our finances. All of those areas combined, we're going to focus on how we can improve and work with the community and all those individuals I indicated to move in a more positive direction. Okay,
sounds great. It sounds great. I got to touch on this. You know, and you know, you're a pretty straight shooter, so I know it's no issue. But the Confederate Monument. Now, the decision, you know, had already been made to move, and it was final. But kind of like thinking in retrospect, looking at, you know, where we are now with all the you know, arrests and everything that's taking place. But looking back, and I don't want you to, you know, the Monday morning quarterback, but at the same time, sometimes we have to look back to understand, you know, how things may or may not have been able to be different or handled different, I should say. How do you feel the city in and of itself could have accomplished that goal without all of the fallout that came from that situation?
Well, first of all, I'm big on relationships and understanding the people that I represent. In 2017, our council voted, and I wasn't on council at that time, voted to relocate or move the monument.
Right.
At that time, no action was taken. And see, sometimes an inaction and an inability to act causes a problem down the road, which fast forward with everything that occurred, nationally and locally, it brought greater scrutiny to the monument.
Right.
I was of the opinion, and I still was in full support of relocating the monument. And unfortunately, time did not allow for that to happen, and that's why we're in the situation we are in today. And it's up to leaders, elected leaders, to make tough decisions, and we failed to do that.
Okay, well, that's honest and unfiltered. In a perfect, in a perfect world, this question would not even be relevant, you know. But Portsmouth is the only majority-minority city in Hampton Roads. Are there any particular challenges or advantages that may or may not come with that destination?
Well, yes, Robert, and let's deal with the challenges first.
Okay.
Portsmouth is a southern city with history.
Right.
And with history, there's black and white in that history. And many people of color, African Americans in the city who grew up in that city and had history of what had occurred before times improved. Those are real experiences, and they're entitled to their experiences, and those experiences need to be addressed by the greater community. Right now, we're dealing with issues in our community that potentially are divisive. They're pitting us against them. And I always share with people, before you go down the racial road, have you worked to build the relationships in the community that will allow for you to come to the table and build some type of cohesive respect and trust with one another? And the most important thing in any community, we are us and we are them. Right. So if we want our community to grow and prosper, we've got to come to an understanding and a level of respect for each other and everyone in order to make that happen. Now, let me deal with the opportunities. Right. The opportunities are very real. In areas of economic development, we have a strong working class population in our city, and that covers all communities. Right. And I think we can benefit from that as we bring new businesses to the city of Portsmouth. For example, offshore wind is coming to Portsmouth, and they're going to be headquartered and homeported in the city of Portsmouth. Those are going to be good paying jobs that's going to create opportunities for everyone in the community. And we have to prepare our citizens to be ready, work ready with the skill sets to take advantage of those opportunities. Okay.
Much like Norfolk, Portsmouth, both are sometimes considered like landlocked cities. Like really the only way it's perceived that you can grow is through redevelopment, right? So how do you think it could possibly lead to, I know we're having a big conversation, I just call it a conversation, over here about gentrification, and with the removal of some of the federally developed housing projects. It's 3 that are slated for demolition right now. And so we're looking at, I guess, the problem is maybe like, I guess when those places are demolished, who's going to move in? It's always been promised and promised and promised that once we tear these down, but you can come on back in, and then it's not affordable. It's not affordable. This game has been going on for years and years and years. How do you feel? I guess being in a city that's considered landlocked, how do you feel that is gentrification a concern?
Well, right now I can tell you, and you segued very good into this question. The reality is, some of our housing communities, particularly public housing communities, are the oldest communities in our city. We have one, Swanson Homes, I think is probably over 60 years old. Wow. We need quality, affordable housing in the city of Portsmouth. We need more density in that area. When you talk about gentrification, I don't see that right in the short term. Long term, we got to keep our eyes on that. But in the short term, we're creating more affordable housing. We just broke ground on a 52-unit new affordable housing development that's coming up. And these are going to be people that are, not high wage earners,
Right.
but they still deserve quality, affordable housing.
Indeed.
So we've got to continue as a city. We are actually engaging right now in a housing study. We've hired a firm to do a housing study to look at the stock of our housing, public housing and all of our housing, to see where we can create more density, create more affordable housing for our individuals in our community that don't make high wages and that may be low wage earners, and our seniors. So we have the capacity to do that, and if we should have to tear down some of those old establishments and build up new, we are capable of doing that. You're correct. We don't have an unlimited amount of land like some of
Right.
our partner cities, but we do have land in which we can continue to build that level of housing for our citizens.
Right. Well, I'm gonna kind of segue myself, moving from, I guess when we start talking about the development or redevelopment, I should say, of low income residential areas, as opposed to perhaps when you're looking at, I think the new word now is affordable housing. But I think in order to have affordable housing, it's going to take an economic investment, and I think a lot of the cities, not calling any city out in particular, but I think a lot of our, of the 7 cities in our region, a lot of the cities, I've seen where schools will be built, libraries will be built, and they'll tear down, the projects, or for lack of a better term, or refurbish them, the housing projects. But what I don't see a lot of, and perhaps you can help me on this, or add some, some energy to where I'm trying to go with this, is the economic investment in the communities. I know that there are a few places where I live, and like I say, I'll see investment in different things, but whenever there's economic investment, it goes downtown. So how do you feel that you could encourage economic investment, not just in some of the downtown areas or the financial districts, but in some of the underserved communities?
Well, I think that's another very valid question. And to your point, so we have some of the oldest communities in the city of Portsmouth. A good example would be the Truxton community, which is one of the oldest, if not the oldest, African-American community in the city of Portsmouth. And so in that corridor, we need to have investment. For example, perhaps a grocery store, some other different types of retail establishments in that corridor. But in order to do that, we have to make sure that we make that area attractive that investment will want to come to.
Definitely.
And so if we have blighted housing, if we have those things, perhaps the strategy could be to land bank some of these areas and then revitalize them, redevelop them to bring in those amenities. And then to improve housing, and when you improve housing, you attract younger individuals, you attract young families,
Right.
You attract professionals, you attract working class. So you get a group of different people that need the services that we can bring to those areas, because everyone can't get downtown.
Right, exactly.
So, we have to bring the services to the community, and I think that that's one example of a community in Portsmouth that I think really needs to have a shot in the arm, so to speak, in the same things that you're talking about to make it more of a viable community.
I've been talking to a lot of various leaders in this, in our region, not just in our city in particular. And one of I remember, it hasn't been vocalized as much, but the term used to be regionalism. I used to hear it all the time at every event, every function that I went to or participated in. That's all they were talking about, as far as the different cities. And, I think the region is actually notorious for the lack of regional cooperation. What steps would you take to improve regional cooperation?
Well, you're kind of like taking this right out of my head. So regionalism to me means collaborating on things that help and improve the quality of life for all of the 7 cities, right?
Right.
And a good example of that would be the tolls.
Wow.
And having a regional focus on helping to mitigate those tolls, because I know that people will say that Portsmouth is more impacted by the tolls, and I would say that they're very right in that way. But the issue is, if Portsmouth residents are impacted, then the whole region's residents are impacted.
Right.
Because if it costs them more to go back and forth on a daily basis, when other people in other places and businesses have to travel, it costs them more. That's a regional issue. That's one example of a regional issue that we can all rally around. Because look, you know, it goes back to that old saying, the team is strong as its weakest player.
That's right.
And if Portsmouth is being adversely impacted by the tolls and other cities are not sharing in that particular issue, then that's a problem. And it's not just Portsmouth's problem. Right. It's the region. And we're working on that, by the way.
And you know, you just took my question, because my next question, when I start talking about regionalism, was that Portsmouth and Norfolk, the 2 cities with perhaps the largest minority populations, you know, they're told on the Midtown toll on the Elizabeth River, and then they're told, of course, on the other part of the side of the Elizabeth River with the Berkeley tolls. And so, I can recall, I've been around here a while, I can recall in Virginia Beach, they had tolls right up around Rosemount area. Mm-hmm. They had, and you had to actually pay to go down to the beach. And I'm wondering, I know they just put a toll up in Chesapeake, on Dominion, which, it's okay. But I always wondered, why in the world? Because a toll is just a tax. It's a user tax. Sure. Basically, that's what it is. And I've always thought that, there's no toll to go from Norfolk to Chesapeake. There's no toll to go from Chesapeake to Virginia Beach. There's no toll to go from Chesapeake to Suffolk. Why is there a toll to go from Norfolk to Portsmouth? And, in my mind, I'm saying, and like I said, because, and it affects the most, not only just the residents, but it affects working class people, because people that are, that are really trying to, feed their families and may not have a whole lot of expendable income, you're just really taxing working class people. So, I really, it really puts kind of a, like I said, a question in my mind, thinking like, why, who approved it? And I know that it was under, it's not even a law. It's actually a contract. And so I recently, and you could probably address this, recently the Elizabeth River, was it ERT?
You mean ERC?
ERC, right. Yeah. Did they put it up for sale, or what is all of that about?
So my understanding is that it is up for sale, and so the sale of that is being kind of looked at by many at the state level. I don't know where that's going. I do know that the Secretary of Transportation and other legislatures are looking at potential options. Mm-hmm. Could the state potentially buy it, and then as a part of that, do something to maybe mitigate tolls? We're just not there from an informational standpoint. Stay tuned, because something will be happening with that, but we don't have all the information. Let's follow up at a later time.
Okay. What about, speaking of regionalism once again, but the Hampton Roads Regional Jail, what about that in relationship to, I know there was an issue with the Portsmouth jail, and where do you fall on all of that issue? What's your opinion of all of that?
So you're right. So that's another regional project that Portsmouth partnered up with others in the region to provide medical service for the inmates, and so that facility really takes care of those with the greatest amount of illnesses and medical situations. Where I fall on it, you have seen where the sheriff in our city, Sheriff Michael Moore, has refused to send inmates because of the issues that they were having regarding safety of the inmates. And that's real. And the Justice Department confirmed those concerns. So where I stand on that is, before we send inmates over there from the city of Portsmouth, we need to clean that up.
Okay.
In addition to that, we need to work with those regional partners to see if there are things that we can do to perhaps improve that situation. Also, as it relates to the jail in Portsmouth, we have our own city jail. And the issue in Portsmouth was, we're paying for beds in the regional jail.
Right.
And we have this city jail. We're losing money. We're paying for beds that we're not filling. Well, when that agreement was done 20 or so years ago, Portsmouth had a disproportionate number of beds, more than any other of the participating cities. And so my rationale as a businessman is, can we renegotiate that piece of it and have a more equitable bed count that serves our needs, and then perhaps look at what options we have with our city jail based on the savings from that? It could create an opportunity for us to do something different. That's what I have always thought of, and that's what I was willing to support.
Okay. So there's not a question of whether they're going to be a new jail or the jail is going to be remodeled or refurbished or something. So I always thought that was the overriding. And that's based on the.
Well, so the idea, the focus is, we've got a plan to redevelop that area. That means that the jail needs to come off of the water, and I'm in agreement with that.
Okay.
I'm in agreement with moving the jail off of the water, but we have to have a reasonable alternative to make sure that the needs of our community are met when we do that.
Right.
You know, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing resolution. It can be something, as we collaborate and sit down at the table and discuss all our options, we can probably come up with a better opportunity that'll meet everybody's need.
Okay. This pandemic is and it's one thing that has affected everybody on the planet. So, it's like, wow, it's kind of been something that's just been the big dark cloud over everything. And I know people are struggling with depression. I think I heard the First Lady say that, she has dealing with low-grade, former First Lady, Michelle Obama, said she was dealing with some type of low-grade depression. And it made me think, what's going on with me? Am I good? And I think that that's a push now that I've been trying to support, particularly for African-American men, that we can say, it's okay not to be okay, And so that's something that our community, is frowned upon, in our community for various reasons. But
well, if I could just speak to that for 1 minute.
Go ahead.
Listen, one of the most important things, having been in healthcare for over 20 years, is your mental health. And to the point that you make, men in general, African American in specific, but men in general, we have this attitude that we can solve all the problems, that we have to have all the answers. And during difficult times in my life, I've had that feeling, but I've also come to the realization to know that I can't handle everything, that I can't fix everything. And when we get to that point, there's nothing wrong. In fact, that's a sign of strength when you reach out for help.
Right.
And so we need to stop this idea, this macho mindset of that. And if we're hurting, man, there's nothing wrong with crying.
Right.
If you're feeling sad, there's nothing wrong with crying. But men in general do that, and we've got to get better at that. And our mental health, I would argue that our mental health is as critical as our physical health, and that's what we got to keep in mind.
Okay. One other thing I want to touch on, when I started down the road of the pandemic, and the schools are going to, for this semester, I think, have already said that they're going to be virtual in the city of Portsmouth. And my question is, and I've been kind of asking, different officials from different cities, that I'm worried. I'm worried about some kids, some vulnerable kids, that it is no way that that they can be home in the situations that they are in. And I just finished speaking with another city council person from Virginia Beach, and one of the things I'm wondering, is there a plan in place that perhaps the city can partner with the school system to maybe have a libraries, or maybe have recreation centers or something, for kids that have been identified as being in vulnerable situations at home, or they may be subject to, some type of abuse or something like that. So that's a concern of mine because I've worked in the school districts of Portsmouth, Norfolk, and I'm thinking like it's some kids that are in special situations, circumstances. So I'm just hoping that there's been some type of fallback plan, or some type of greater plan that's in place.
Well, so Robert, I can tell you that is a concern of mine. And so I reached out to Dr. Bracey, who was our school superintendent, and our city manager. I know we have all been talking. Mm-hmm. And to your point, not only is the social and mental well-being a concern, but because we're going to this virtual type of program,
right.
What about technology and our kids receiving that technology, having access to the technology?
Equally.
Particularly in those environments that may not be fully prepared for it. So we've got a number of challenges that we're facing, but to your point, I have total confidence in our superintendent and our schools, and they are aware. I've talked to Dr. Bracey. He and his team are working very diligently to make sure that all the needs of our children in Portsmouth Public Schools are met. And if there are gaps, we've already had this conversation. We're putting together additional funding to make sure we have the resources to get the tablets, to get the technology. We are not going to shirk any of the needs for our children to learn in this environment, and we're going to encourage them and we're going to support them. And that's what I intend to do from now and even when I become mayor of the city of Portsmouth.
Well, thank you very much. We're talking to Shannon Glover, who is currently a city council person, soon to be, as of November the 3rd, soon to be the mayor for the city of Portsmouth. Is there a website or some information you want to tell everybody about?
So they can go, if they want to learn more about Shannon Glover and what our plan is for Portsmouth, they can go to my website, www.shannonglover2020.com, and our Facebook is Glover for Mayor 2020. So I encourage you to go out, check us out. If you have any questions, please call me. And by the way, on that website is a donate button. We always need resources to fund our campaign and our future for our city. So you're welcome to go out there and make a contribution to Glover for Mayor 2020. And the last thing I want to say, I'm looking forward to serving the citizens of Portsmouth and moving our city in a bold new direction.
All right. Thank you very much for coming out, and we'll catch you next time on Unfiltered with Bob Z. Have a great day.